So Bergson is saying that if we had um, if we had a word and it was recorded on a phonographic plate, or let's say today, let's say we had a word and we recorded it in a file on the computer. Um, the metaphor that the brain is like a computer or a phonograph doesn't work because you see, he says that in auditory recollection, it says the same word pronounced by different persons or by the same person at different times in different sentences would give us uh, audio files which do not coincide with one another. But yet, I have one recollection of the word. So why do I have one recollection of the word, which is supposed to be a file, when in fact the same word produced by different persons or by the same person at different times in different sentences would give us audio files which do not coincide with one another? How then can the recollection of the how then can the recollection of the sound of a word, a recollection in memory which is relatively invariable and unique, be compared to a phonogram or to an audio file? This consideration alone would be enough in itself to throw suspicion on the theory which attributes diseases affecting the memory of words to an alteration or destruction of the recollections themselves, automatically registered by the cerebral cortex. So what he's saying is that what he's going to be doubting is that he says that it's not when you have a lesion in your brain and you can no longer articulate certain words, when you lose the memories, when you lose the supposed tissue in the brain which stores or houses the memories of words in aphasia, it's not the memories themselves that are gone. It's just the tissue which is used to recall those memories is gone. This is what he thinks, at least. And he's going to explain why. But let us see what actually occurs in these diseases. He's given you the hypothesis and the explanation by which people who assert an equivalence or a parallelism between mind and brain, that's their explanation. So he says, but let's see what actually occurs in these diseases. When the cerebral lesion is severe and the word memory is deeply affected, it may happen that a more or less vigorous stimulus, an emotion, for example, will suddenly bring back the recollections which had seemed lost forever. Could this be possible if the recollection had been originally deposited in the cerebral matter which has suffered injury or destruction? He's saying that if you sometimes people who have aphasia can suddenly, if they undergo a shock or some kind of emotional distress, the recollections come back to them. He says, would that be possible if the memories were actually in the brain? He says things happen because that part of the brain is gone. I mean, so how could that be? Why would an emotion? He says things happen much more as if the brain served to recall the recollection and not to store it. So it just recalls memories, does not store memories. The sufferer from aphasia becomes incapable of finding the word when he wants it. He seems to be feeling his way all around it, lacking the desired power of putting his finger on the exact point he wants. In the psychological domain, indeed, the external sign of strength is always precision. But the recollection, to all appearance, is there, and sometimes, when replacing by paraphrases, the word which he thinks is lost, the patient may actually bring the right word into one of them. So by dancing around the word, he can find the word, but he can't put his finger right on it. Kind of like in trigonometry, finding a point in a cone. I think this is the kind of, if you know anything about trigonometry, that's the kind of metaphor he's using, I think. Or that's the imagery I think he's using to write this. So the recollection is there. And sometimes when the person with aphasia, with a brain damage, when replacing by paraphrases the word which he thinks about. So if he's trying to think of red, he'll be like, it is strawberries and apples, and he thinks of all these red things, and then finally he goes, oh, red. It comes by dancing all around it. He'll get to it, but he can't he doesn't have the ability to be precise and just pick the word like most normal people can. Kind of like attractor dynamics and dynamic systems theory. He gets in the neighborhood of the attractor, and then the trajectory will eventually find the attractor basin, but he can't go right to it. And he says that what has become enfeebled in his case is that what has become enfeebled or weakened in the person who has aphasia or the brain damage is that adjustment to the situation. So it's not that he's lost a memory, which is gone. It's his ability to adjust this to the total situation around him, which the cerebral mechanism is contrived to secure, the attention to life. Or, to speak more precisely, what is affected is the faculty of evoking the recollection by sketching in advance the movements in which the recollection, as it were, would be prolonged. So what he's saying is that the brain, actually what it does is that it predicts in the future, it sketches out the movement into which, it sketches out in advance the movements into which the recollection will then be like prolonged into, will flow into. When we have forgotten so this is a question that Bergson wants to ask. He says, when we have forgotten a proper name, say Sally, when we've forgotten the name, how do we set about recalling it? We try with all the letters of the alphabet, one after the other, A, B, C, D, E. We pronounce them inwardly, first of all, and then, if that is not enough, out loud. We thus place ourselves, this is when we're trying to recall a proper name, we place ourselves in turn in all the various motor dispositions between which we have to choose. So you say A, B, C, D, all these things are motor disposition. They are bodily dispositions, which we place ourselves in successively, one after the other, because those are all of our choices. And eventually we go A, P, Q, R, S. Sally, because S sketches out the movements I will need into which the recollection will finally insert itself and unroll itself. So the body prepares the way, and the memory is just always trying to get in there. But all we have to do is get click, 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 get the right key, get the right shape, and it will fit right in. Kind of the way, the flow he's thinking about here. So we place ourselves in turn in all the various motor dispositions between which we have to choose. Once the desired attitude, bodily attitude is found, the sound of the word sought that we're seeking slips into it, as into a frame prepared to receive it. So we have all these pictures that are trying to get in, and we get the right frame, the picture goes and it gets right in. It is this play, this play of motor attitudes and bodily attitudes, real or virtual, that is to say, actually performed or merely sketched out, that the cerebral mechanism has to secure. And it is this, probably, that the disease of the brain attacks.